Okay, before we get into the finale proper, let's go over the stuff beforehand. Skip ahead if you already feel pretty set up. First, I'm gonna assume that you're prepared enough to have all 4 E-tanks and the special tank that you can carry, though 1 or 2 weapon tanks wouldn't be a bad idea either. If you don't, summon the Big Eddie from the stage select, the select button should do it, and buy tanks from there. Getting Otto's Bolt from Springman's stage to lower the bolt price on things is a good idea as well. Then you have the boss rush, which I won't go over all of them, just make sure you're exploiting weaknesses and try to refill your Thunderbolt and Wild Coil afterwards. I will cover Wily Machine 7 though, since you'll be fighting it right before the capsule, and getting through it with as little damage as possible is gonna be important. Its weakness is the Thunderbolt, which you want to aim at the open window. Avoid it by sliding under its chin as it moves to the other side of the screen. When it does, it'll leap up, and when it comes back down, it'll land on either the right or left of the screen, so make sure you're staying in the middle to avoid damage. It has 2 main attack patterns. The one it mainly uses is to pop out 2 smaller machines that will chase you down as it slowly advances. While some people do make the effort to wipe these out, I don't think it's really worth it, since they automatically get destroyed when the Wily Machine lands after its next jump. And while there are 2, they turn around pretty slowly, so it's really easy to sync them up, doing so making it so that it's like you only have 1 to worry about. The main threat is getting under Wily in time. If the machine moves forward too much, it'll swap from walking to making wide jumps, which are harder to contend with. Once you're on the other side, it speeds up its walk, so you don't have to worry about not having enough room behind him to dodge the mini-mechs unless you really jump the gun. Err on the side of caution and you should be fine. He also sometimes does shorter jumps, but he won't put out the small guys when he does so it's not too hard to get the timing right, and you can even take a few shots before you do so. If you can get the patterns and timing down, it's really not too hard to no damage this fight. Then we get to the real battle. Wily pops in at various points on the screen, then attacks. The floor in the middle is safe from pop-in, so stick around there and just don't jump. He sends out 4 elemental orbs, which will then fly towards your position once, then again, traveling off screen. These are really hard to avoid, but if you follow the rest of my advice, you should be able to go blow for blow with the capsule, though still trying to dodge them is a good idea. If you're feeling frisky, move as far away from the capsule as possible after dropping your springs. Do a jump to bait the first pivot, then run at the capsule and slide as the orbs move again to get under them. And if he's at the bottom of the screen, just try jumping over all the orbs at the very last second from the other corner. This one can be hard to pull off, and I'm not even confident that it's the best way to avoid him, so you can also zap him with a Thunderbolt when he's at this height, which will do no damage but interrupt him, so he won't send out the orbs. And if you manage to hit the capsule, it will also drop a large ball of energy that splits into 4 and travel along the ground, so even if you manage to dodge the main attack, be ready for this follow-up. Some also give up on dodging and instead focus on only getting hit with certain attacks. Getting hit with the yellow balls will just damage you, and give you your normal iframes. This is what a lot of strategies suggest is the best to get hit by if you have to tank something. Just make sure that you're getting hit with the second movement, since those iframes don't last long. The reds will light you on fire and eat away at your health until the flames go out. Of course, you can't get hit with anything else while you're ablaze, and you can also pause while in this state, so taking one of these at a strategic point and sucking down an E-tank when you're down to just 1 tick of health might be smart, but you better be pretty confident in your timing. The blues freeze you, and while you can break out, since after this phase you'll probably also have to worry about the follow-up attack, you're pretty much guaranteed to get hit with that as well. Anyway, after that he disappears and starts the cycle over again. As for how you damage it, you want to always be using the Wild Coil, since that does the most damage. Always be charging one and make sure you also hold up when you release, since doing both gets the maximum heights on your bounces and can hit him no matter where he pops up. I'll repeat that, since not a lot of guides will cover this. You want to be holding up while also charging to get not just the maximum damage, but also maximum height. Though if he's not at the top of the screen and it's easier for you to aim, you can forego the up tilt. Another thing worth mentioning is that you can only damage him once per round. So if you hit him once, don't get greedy and just conserve your weapon ammo. You should have just enough to clear the battle, but if you whiff some shots, that's what the weapon tanks are for, though if you need health too, the special tank also works. If you do all this, you should win and maybe even have a few tanks left over. I even have some bonus strategies for you. Here's the damage chart from the wiki. A lot of people who don't know about the max height Wild Coil will advise you to quickly swap to Freeze Cracker if he's too high up for just the charge coil, since you can steer the shot up or down for some chip damage. You can still probably do this if you don't have a full charge ready or just aren't confident, just not on Twitch. If you want to do a challenge run for some crazy reason, the Buster does work, but only full charge. There's the Thunder Beam stun, which I mentioned earlier. And while not as dodgy, the Super Adapter does work and has homing with its upgraded punch. Once on the PS4, my knee-jerk reactions paired up perfectly with the input lag so that I miraculously managed to fly around most of his attacks. Pretty wacky, but not as wacky as Turbo Man Insta-Kill. Anyway, that's all I got, which should hopefully be enough to let anyone who made it to the end of the game be able to clear it. And now we can get into the actual discussion part of the video. I could see a lot of people clicking on this for the gameplay stuff, so I didn't want to bullcrap anyone and drag things out. If the first bit was helpful though, I would appreciate the watch time if you wouldn't mind sticking around. Maybe a like and or subscribe. But yeah, that's how you beat the Wily Capsule reliably. While it used to give me issues, at this point, I don't need to sweat it too much. Even so though, there's still enough wrong with this finale that I won't defend it like some will, so I'm gonna go over why I think the Wily Capsule is a problem. I'm Wes the Explosion, and yeah, I'm still banging on about this. The first issue is how things are set up. Before you can fight the capsule or even Wily Machine, you need to get through the boss rush. How this is broken up can vary throughout the series. Some games give separate stages for the boss rush and Wily, some put the rush and Wily Machine in the same stage but have the finale in another, others have rush, then machine, then final, all segregated. I don't know whether it came down to their moods, what felt appropriate for each, or if they were constantly tweaking things, trying to figure out the balance, but I'd say that the harsher all-in-ones are kind of rare, though 7, 8, and 9 all do this, and 9's kinda meant to teabag you. Anyway, if you game over, that means that you have to fight through all 8 Robot Masters again, which is a slog after you've already done it once. Once you get the capsule down, it's not so much an issue, but when you're not at that point, this is hugely discouraging. I share the opinion that I've heard others discuss, that you can make your game really hard, as long as you can get right back into it fast to try again. Think how quickly you can restart a battle in Cuphead. And while I won't deny that you can lose progress in Mega Man, you can easily get all the way to the boss, only to die and have to redo the stage. Normally those are more interesting than just hitting Junkman with his weakness a few times. This though can be really draining, especially with all those extra damage animations extending the fights. And even if you want to say that the boss rush is only a factor if you really screw up, if you lose just once, when you jump back down to face the Wily Machine 7 again, it takes almost 20 seconds just to walk out onto the screen and reveal its health bar. It all feels intentionally dragged out, like the game wants you to sit in the corner and think about what you did. Then there's the issue of tanks. Most games let you carry up to 9, and the only game besides this that makes me really sweat whether I brought enough is 9, which is meant to be sadistic. Here though, you get 4 tanks and 1 special, meaning 5 health refills, which would normally be a lot, but until I learned most of the tricks, it would take me exactly all of them in order to clear the Wily Capsule. That meant not just that I had to hoard my tanks until I was absolutely sure that this was the run, but if I messed up after downing just 1, I was pretty much screwed until I could get an opportunity to restock, hopefully without needing to grind bolts. Maybe this, by the skin of your teeth scenario is just a me thing, but given how infamous this boss is, I doubt it. The pressure to maximize what you get from your tanks, combined with what you'd have to sit through if you fail, makes it feel like the game is just looking for an excuse to punish you, and I don't think anyone loads this cartridge up looking for some S&M stuff. My much bigger gripe though, is with the weakness itself, the Wild Coil. This honestly feels like a cruel joke, since they can be awkward to use, and while they can bounce high, the capsule often floats higher. It honestly feels like the game is taunting you. Of course, that's assuming that you don't know that you can make them go higher by holding up as you fire them off, but the question is, why would you? There is precedence for the series putting hidden functions in for some of the weapons. They don't tell us that you can throw metal and shadow blades in multiple directions, yet people figured it out, and when I learned that you could angle the Night Crush, I felt like an idiot for not fiddling with it more. But things are different here. Every time you clear a boss and get their weapon, you warp back to the lab and have a jolly old chat about what they're capable of. It takes away a lot of the need to experiment, since it just straight up tells you what it does, including some of the extra features. It's even worse for the Wild Coil though, since you're told that you can charge it for extra bounce, so at that point, why would you think that there's a way to make them go higher-er? Heck, why would you think it'd be the up button? Despite what I just said, I used to think that there had to be a way for them to go higher, since they were the weakness for the Capsule and Shade Man, both of whom fly pretty high. My logic was to jump right before dropping them, to add the force of gravity into their upwards trajectory, but that obviously never worked. Do you want to know how I found out how pushing up made the springs go higher? Last year, I did a review on Mega Man 7 and had the thing pretty well written. Before I finalized everything, I went back and checked the wiki to make sure that there weren't any special traits to any of the weapons that I didn't know about, and there weren't. For 7 of the 8. It was such new information to me and I was so annoyed by it that I mentioned it so briefly in my review that it'd be easy to miss. I didn't even go back to get fresh footage of it. I was so done with the game at that point, so this video is in part to correct my previous laziness. But still, there's no reason for anyone to suspect this was a thing. When I was trying to look up tips for the fight, I found one video where someone was pulling off the up tilt, but it didn't have any commentary over it and no one mentioned it in the comments, so I legitimately questioned whether the guy was hacking. And when I went searching through GameFAQs guides for this, hoping to find damage charge for the Capsule's attacks to no avail, I'm not sure if any of them mentioned the up tilt trick. On the contrary, I've seen several that offer the other obscure methods of attack, such as stunning it with the Thunderbolt or steering the Freeze Cracker up into it, 2 more functions not mentioned by Light, so it seems like people have figured out every trick except for the extra bounce. This is some Nintendo power bullshit, probably added in to get an extra page in gaming periodicals, and if you need a cheat to beat a game, I don't think that excuses an otherwise obnoxious fight. The Wild Coil trick doesn't justify the Wily Capsule any more than the Ultimate Armor Code makes X6 a good game. The last issue is just how difficult the fight is meant to be, or to quote Keiji Inafune, one of the main people making the game, let's make the very last fight insanely hard. And while I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with a hard fight, heck, many consider Mega Man as a whole a challenge, I at least think there should be a few rules. Sure, the final boss should probably be the hardest part of the game, but it shouldn't be that much harder than everything else. I won't lie and act like there aren't still a few spots that give me trouble in the rest of the playthrough. Slash Man can sometimes still kick my butt, and those bouncy tires over spikes can still get me to clench up. But if just the last boss manages to take up a large fraction, maybe even the majority of a playthrough, if folks just don't give up on it altogether, I think you've done a pretty terrible job of balancing your game. To put it another way, if your game goes from being an average of 7 in difficulty, and you crank things up to an 11 for the last 5 minutes, I think you screwed up. This used to be so rough for me that it ruined the entire run, since all I could think about was what was waiting for me at the end, no matter how delightful everything else was. I think that a gradual increase in challenge is the ideal, and in Mega Man 7, that should be easier than most, since while most in the series you can complete stages in any order until the Wily Fortresses, this one has an intro, 4 stages, an intermission, 4 more stages, then a final set of levels. You get 1 or 2 trickier stages thrown in, a slight uptick in the Wily Fortress, then death. To make things worse, they put this in Mega Man 7, the first and only classic title on the Super Nintendo, at least for international audiences. With it being on a new console, it could also very easily have wound up being someone's introduction to the series, and they made it a noob killer. Imagine deciding to try the franchise out, getting here and then just assuming that this is what Mega Man is. Thank God X was there to soften the blow. Oddly enough, I might have been able to accept this if this were in Mega Man 6 instead. That game came out after the Super Nintendo, so the only people still picking this up on the NES were probably Mega Man diehards. If they wanted to include a super hard final boss in this game, as a special challenge for all the loyal fans, that would have actually been really cool. But nope, you can just pretend that the Silver Tomahawk is your new buster and take out all 3 Wily forms, even while missing a few shots. To put it here though, just feels like you're kneecapping your potential audience growth. To put everything together, with the potential need to repeat the boss rush, the fewer E-tanks, the obtuse weakness, how unbalanced it feels next to everything else, to how newcomer unfriendly it is, to how a lot of guides will literally suggest which type of attack you should try to get hit by, since they assume that dodging is out, and this whole fight feels just very mean-spirited. Even more so when you add in the line from the actual developers, since that confirms that it wasn't just something that didn't get play tested enough but an actual conscious choice. It almost feels like it was meant to be an inside joke between some of the creators, without the understanding that an inside joke is typically kept inside a social group, not something set out to potentially millions of people. Holy Blizzard Buffalo! One thing that I'd like to make clear is that this is not a critique of people who like the Wily Capsule. If you like the sort of challenge this finale offers up, that's cool, and if you're the sort of crazy person who can no damage the fight, I respect it. My beef with it is more from a design standpoint, due to all the reasons I previously stated, though I guess, for better or worse, this battle is iconic. Made it into Smash as an assist trophy after all. But hey, what do you think? Is this one too hard? Is the difficulty exaggerated? Or is it maybe just right? Did you already know about the Wild Coil trick, and if so, where did you learn it? And even if you like the fight, can you at least understand where I'm coming from, or do I just not understand game design? I talked about the Wily Capsule a few times in the past, but with more people visiting the channel lately, there have been some new comments on the subject. Since I don't like replying to stuff on old videos because it can be hard to remember the headspace I was in, I feel like I didn't cover the Wild Coil trick in depth enough, and I just couldn't seem to find any actual good guides on the fight other than just a few straight comments. I figured a more in-depth look was warranted. Hopefully it wasn't too much of a rehash that it felt like I was beating a dead horse. That'll do it though, so thanks as always for watching, and thanks for the 800 subs. Went from inching towards 700 to this in just a few weeks, which is really putting the pressure on me to come up with something special for 1000. Good pressure though, so thanks again. Something for everlasting peace.